Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Shawn Dostie. I am the charity ambassador and the podcast owner of America's Fundraiser. And I am happy today to have with us a legend by the name of Seth. Seth, I did not look at where you're out of, and I wanted to bring up an interesting thought. I've done about 8 of these episodes. I think he's number 9, and all the ones that I've had before have all been pretty close friends of mine and people that I've met throughout the years. Today, I have a guest that I've never met before, and in doing my due diligence with him, I found out that, like all the others, he is fascinating. So, Seth, tell us a little bit about yourself and what your role is in the nonprofit industry in the fundraising area.
Yeah, sure, Shawn. Well, my name is Seth Weiner. I'm your auctioneer. That's my company. I'm out of Atlanta, Georgia, and I'm a full-time benefit fundraising auctioneer. I come from the music industry. I was in the music industry for 20 years, working with music festivals, mainly like destination events, resort events where you take over the entire resort, be it the Avett Brothers, Zach Brown, Widespread Panic, Wilco, bands like that, My Morning Jacket, etc., and some cruises as well. And in doing that, I also was ran music festival staffing for festivals from Bonnaroo and Coachella all the way down to Electric Forest and Halloween and all the other ones in between. So I come from the music industry, but why I'm your auctioneer is because I turn my organizations that I work with, I turn their supporters into rock stars, because really they're the ones, keeping them afloat and giving all that money to be able to make really big things happen. I transitioned right before COVID to be a full-time fundraising auctioneer. And in addition to doing nonprofit fundraisers, I also do some game shows, and I work with a cruise called NurseCon at Sea, where I provide all the entertainment not all, but I provide entertainment on board in the form of game shows like Nurse Feud and other things like that. And yeah, that's in a nutshell what I do as a fundraiser. I work with nonprofits. I help them not just do a live auction and a fund to need, but really the coaching to get the most out of their events and the most out of their supporters.
So your website is yourauctioneer.com.
You got it. ROCKTIONEER.com.
I was there earlier and I was fascinated because, I mean, we've all heard of the different things that fundraising auctioneers do, but you are unique in that you replicate game shows. I know you've probably never been asked this before, but how did you get into doing game shows? And I would think the trademarks and the copyrights and all that water that you have to tread. But the bigger question, even other than that, is once you get it set up, which are fascinating, how do you use that to raise money for your organizations?
Yeah, that's a good question. And to start, like the game shows where I got into it is through those resort events. I was creating games where the artists, the musicians of all the different bands, they would be at these events, could interact with the fans in different ways. So I create like poolside casinos and then I'd start venturing off into like popular game shows and whatnot. You'll notice like Nurse Feud is not Family Feud, it's Nurse Feud. And it's also not done the exact same way that you would see on the TV. So I try to spice things up a little bit differently. Because obviously I don't have the copyrights to do Family Feud, and nor would I. But most of the stuff I do with the game shows right now is for profit. It's for like a nurse conference or music events. But there is a way to do this for nonprofits, and I've done a little bit with it, and I'm starting to branch out right now, and that's why the website looks the way it does, is because I'm focusing on these corporate events and conferences because they're already doing game shows. So kind of like one element is coming in and doing something like a game show to break the ice on the Monday morning, and then on Wednesday evening to raise money for their foundations. So that's one. But as I started going through that process, I've discovered that there's a lot of corporations that are doing annual giving campaigns already. They're already spending money on a night where they're bringing all their employees together. Their employees have spent X number of dollars, and then there's a certain match going on. The United Way has this happening left and right, with all their, of course they do, like the United Way has all the different organizations they're helping, and they're doing matching funds, and the matching funds are happening with that corporation, and the corporation is typically doing like a golf tournament or something, a build a bike night, it's this sort of stuff. So where I'm coming in is saying, hey, let's have fun. Let's do a game show. And a game show isn't just like, what you said, Family Feud or whatnot. It's not just that. That's like a signature type style of game show. I like to customize minute to win a game. So for example, like with the nurses, and when I'm doing a program for nurses, well, nurses deal with bedpans, don't they? So like imagine a minute to win a game, the poop shoot's one of my favorite. So the rubber chickens that you stretch,
Yeah,
and you fling them. Well, they make little poop ones. And so we fling them into a bedpan, and you get, contestants across from it. So I like to customize the game to the client. I've got a couple other ones coming up that are, automobile related. There's another one that's for a gambling company that does online betting. So there's all sorts of stuff that, try to create those minute to win it situations. So they're in line with the fund, with the organization or the company. Another fundraiser that I love game show wise is like the traditional bingo, right? Well, I don't like traditional bingo. I like name that tune bingo. I also like bingo where it's learn about the organization, and we take their annual report and we put that out into bingo. And so how many children were rescued last year through this service? Oh my God, 500. How, you get my point, right? So like you have the facts there. But that
you could do the same thing with Jeopardy.
Yeah, exactly. But that morning, that program is a fundraiser. So imagine, instead of just like, in addition to your traditional gala, some organizations I work with will do a bingo and bubbly event. So they'll sell, but the bingo events really cater to women. And so we'll sell 20 tables, 10 women per table. And it's, most of the time it's like a sponsor will buy the table, and then they'll bring their friends, and then there's like a best, a theme. And so like the best dress for the garden party or whatever it might be. There's still a fund to need where you can do a paddle raise. We're still going to have a small silent auction. We may still do a revenue generating game or two. Then we do our bingo. Everyone paid money to be there, so they get X number of bingo tickets, and then cards rather. And then we play traditional bingo. We play some events I've done. I mean, you look at like Planned Parenthood, drag brunch bingo is a great one. So there's all different ways to go about it. But we're taking those pieces from the gala and just inserting them into another program. And that, that's done in the morning. We still raise a good amount of money. Now it's not your, $500,000 event, but it's a, $150,000, $200,000 event if done right.
I know a lot of organizations would be thrilled with those numbers.
Yeah. And, it takes the right organization that has the right pull to be able to get the people. If you don't have the butts in the seats, you don't have the money in the room.
Absolutely. That real estate is very expensive. Very, very important, those seats.
And another one too, just real quick, is the schools. And I feel like that's an untapped source also. The schools do their annual gala. The parents get together in March. They have a big night out. It's great. They raise a bunch of money. It's a lot of work for the parents that are on the committee to put it together. But there's the game show piece is another easy one for a night out. Now I share this because I don't do it too much because the amount of money that I would charge and the amount of money they would make, it wouldn't be worth it. Right.
Sure.
But for an auctioneer that's starting out, that's like, hey, I really want to work with that school, and they do a gala, they don't even use an auctioneer. How do you get in with them? One way to potentially get in with them would be through offering some sort of unique game show. If there's a local bar, a local brewery, do a parents' night out and do a game, come up with whatever game you want. You go online, you can find, a million of them. And then if you're an auctioneer, you got the personality already. So interact and engage with people, make it fun. You can have people, pay money to, a lip sync contest. And maybe it's not just you have to lip sync, like you pay money to participate, but maybe you pay money to get someone else to participate, and enough money is raised to get the principal to have to do a Taylor Swift song. You know what I'm saying? So like, it's very scalable the way you can do it, but it's a great way to make it so that it's really very on the part of the school. All they got to do is promote it and get people there. You do the rest.
That's fabulous. That's a fascinating approach. And there are so many nonprofits out there that aren't to the stage where they're doing $300,000 galas or $500,000 and can't afford us or somebody, just starting out or that's innovative, which I've noticed that you do a lot of. Wanted to switch gears a little bit. I noticed on your website, one of the first things that you say is instead of a fund to need, use a cash appeal. Now, where I'm come from, there's not much difference between a fund to need and a cash appeal. It's kind of like what's in a name. A rose by any other name would still smell as sweet. So what is your take on that?
Oh no, they're the exact same thing. It's just a matter of catching the eye and having.
Okay, I saw that and it caught my eye. I mean, it did exactly that, and I noticed it was prevalent. I mean, it was one of the first things that you said on your website, and you have a fabulous website, by the way.
No, thank you.
I really enjoyed it, and I peruse, doing what I do. I when I'm following up in doing my due diligence on my guests, I do take a look. So,
well, I appreciate this. So one of the interesting facts, the reason why I kind of kick off with that is cash appeal, fund to need. I want people to start thinking about that. Here's an interesting fact. I want to pull a statistic up from my from my Instagram here real quick. So in January, where is it? Of course, it's not going to load quickly. Since January of this year, I've raised 1.65 million. So we've had 16 events this year. We raised over $1.65 million. But here's what's interesting. The majority of the fundraising came in at 40% with the fund to need. So basically what I'm saying here is that fund to need is where supporters are making generous donations and are in return, and getting nothing. They're just giving, right?
Absolutely.
And out of all of that, 40% of the 1.65 million came in through fund to need. And I wish the graphic was opening. I don't know why it's not. But there we go. Here we go. So 40% fund to need, 24% live auctions, 23% online auctions. So those are pretty close. Keep in mind how much work goes into an online auction, 30, 50, 60, 70 items versus a live auction, 5, 6 experiences. So 24% coming in from live, 23 from online, and 11% coming in with those revenue generators, your heads or tails, your golden tickets, your rock, paper, scissors, your raffles, your this sort of stuff. So I share this because 40% is coming in through the paddle race, the fund to need. A lot of events are like, well, I don't know if we need an auctioneer. We can just have, and it's like, you're going to go ahead and have the caterer, which essentially, your TV host or whomever, you can have a good personality, but to be able to successfully raise money in a fund to need, a paddle raise, it takes a professional. And what a professional is able to do in that is help a client before the event. It's not just during the event and be able to help with the emotional appeal, but it's before the event, coaching them on how are you going to set this up? What is your ask? Better yet, what are your analytics from the past years? If you don't have any, okay, we're going to start from scratch, but do you have any pre-confirmed donors? What does that look like? I mean, if I have a client say, we're going to raise $100,000 in our fund to need, I'm like, okay, cool. I need to know that you got 60% of that pre-confirmed. Now, I don't mean that the money you got to check. I mean that, because if you think of, I mean that you have it pre-confirmed. And if you think about 60% of your $100,000, that's not coming in at your $100 level or $200. That's like 4 to 6 people max. Your top donors, your 5,000, your 2,500. And if you could go and just go to those folks and say, hey, listen, Shawn, it's incredible. You gave last year at the $5,000 level. I want to thank you so much. And by the way, your $5,000 allowed us to be able to build that new, got all the furniture for that room. The kids are so happy at school because of that. Let them know what that money
Owner
did.
development.
Mm-hmm. And then find out like, hey, are you coming back? I'm just curious. Are you going to be back with us this year? And if so, like, was it a good year? You planning on giving about the same? We're just trying to get an idea of, so we don't go in blindly to our fund of need. Like, we kind of want to have an idea of our goals, even attainable. And then,
I think so many of our events, so many of the people involved, they are so stressed getting to that night of the event, and the night of the event, they're running around like chickens with their heads cut off, and instead of trusting a professional, instead of being out there doing their job, which is to mingle with the guests that they invited, they're trying to take care of administrative things. And then the next day, it's crickets. You don't hear anything from them, and they don't realize that the event itself has ended, but the job isn't over until about a week after that, after everybody's been contacted, everybody's been thanked and developed for the following year. And I think that is something that faces the industry. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, that's right. I mean, so when a client hires me, I hope to work with them year after year, right? So
absolutely,
in that same way, like as soon as the event's done, do we have another date for next year? Is it going to be around the same time? Let's put a hold on it. I like to start my consulting about 6 months minimum, but I mean 8-9 months. I'm having a check in. Hey, I just want to check in. What's the theme this year? Are we going with this? Are we going with a band? Like just the big picture stuff.
Sure.
Also, I want some FaceTime, Shawn. I want to see how your family is. I want to know, like, you're doing well and what's new with the school, what's new with the organization. Hey, but also I remind them of this. I say, look, the event happens. You thank your people, you thank your supporters right away, right? I want to thank you for your donation, your $5,000. You send them a thank you note, handwritten, pick up the phone, whatever it is. You got to touch them. And then 3 months after, so you want to hit them 4 times a year. It's basically once a quarter, right? So 3-4 months later, hey, Shawn, I just want to thank you again. That $5,000 really did wonders. We were able to go ahead and the facility's up. Here's a photo, or we were able to get so many meals, whatever the money was for. Show them. You don't ask for anything. You thank them and you show them what the money was for. Then the next quarter, is, hey, save the date. Our event's coming up. I want to make sure you know about it. Again, a thank you for your past, but you're just letting them know that. And then as we get closer to the event, it's the check-in, like, hey, I want to let you know what we're raising money for this year, and can we count on your support again? But a lot of organizations forget those 3 quarters, and they only go ahead and do a quick thank you, and then a couple weeks before the next event, hey, Shawn, are you coming? We really want your money. It's like, I've been in those shoes. I'm with people that get that call and are like, I can't believe that they only reach out to me right before their event. The organizations that reach out to their donors in between and don't ask for anything and just acknowledge and thank them are the ones that get the more support.
That is so true and so important. What about, do you do a lot with schools? Do you have any interaction with schools?
Yeah, I would say that's probably about 30 to 40% of my business.
Okay. How do you treat the parents of the 12th graders or the 6th graders going to the next level when you're dealing with the elementary school? Do you keep in contact with them knowing that they're going to be gone? And I mean, in the schools, it seems like you have the kindergarten parents coming in, and they may or may not be as involved as somebody that's got the 4th, 5th, and 6th graders, or the same with the freshmen compared to, they have to be developed to become the juniors and seniors, that where the larger gifts seem to come from. And I may be a little off base there. I don't know, but it bears discussion. What are your thoughts?
I mean, every school's a little different. Some schools have more of a legacy with their, the seniors, where they want, the parents as like a staple, like every year. we're gonna raise the most money. We're gonna give the most money. We want to leave our mark. It's all very different, but let's just kind of backtrack. I don't really work directly with those parents, right? Like I work with the parents on the committee. And so, and I always with schools got to keep in mind, these are parents. They might like, if like, everyone who had a wedding was a wedding planner, right? Every bride's like, oh, I'm a wedding planner now. Well, those are the ones that end up sitting on the committee. And it's like, they've got like their 9 to 5 job. They got the 2 kids that they're schlepping around after school. And then I'm sitting here telling them like, you got to go and you got to reach out and you got to do so, it's really challenging to keep that in mind, because this is not what they do full time. And so it's important when the school has a development director to really keep them engaged and involved, because they're the ones that are going to be able to drive it. And then, like when it comes to like giving the most and whatnot, it's hard to say that because again, it's very different. Like, are we doing school projects, or class projects, or are we doing experiences? It's hard to say. So, if we have like a school, and I always try to get the committee to really go to the class parents, and find out from the class parents, but the class parents going to talk to all the other parents in the class. So I want to know before we go to the auction, like they want a live auction item. They want it to really, be something special. Well, don't tell me that you like Tuscany in the trip if no one has a passport at the school. Like you want to make sure that we're getting what the parents want. And so you got to educate them, and you got to it starts with the chair, right? So the chair can then talk to the class parents, and then, hey, in your next class meeting with the parents, would you ask the question like, is anyone planning a trip, for spring break? Now this is like now, right? And so if the event is going to be in August, September, October, what's everyone's spring break plans? Anyone looking for anything particular travel wise? Is it Colombia? Is it Costa Rica? Is it Mexico and Cancun or Los Cabos, or like, and then you find out like, oh yeah, the class 3 has like 3 parents that really want to do something in Los Cabos. It's like, okay, cool. Tell them not to buy anything yet.
Yeah,
don't
there you go.
book your trip. And then we know we've got some active bidders. And so I think that's again where that can go really well.
Okay. I had a question. You have obviously you consult with your clients quite closely. We've been over that, but how do you help a nonprofit organization within the consultation of committees and marketing and things of that nature?
So I've got my 6 steps to success. And basically I work it out here. I'm going to pull up my, I have a work plan I work with all my clients on. And so I have a full outline.
You're going to send that to me, right?
For $29.99 a month. No. So basically I always offer an onboarding session. Like, then that's not really part of my 6 steps, but if they want to do an onboarding, I'm more than happy to do an onboarding where, well, actually, I meant kickoff party, excuse me. Onboarding happens. Onboarding is the first thing we do, is then we go through their full work plan. What are their goals? We set their goals. I love setting goals because we want to raise $100,000. Cool. So let's break it down. What are you going to raise what's your goal with a fund of need? What's your goal with a live auction, online auction? No, well, they'll have goals, and then I calculate those goals and I say, awesome. Your overall goal is $100,000, but you just said realistically that you're only going to make $60,000 because you're going to do 10,000 here, 5,000 here. And it's like, well, if you want to raise $100,000, either we got to lower your overall goal to what's realistic, or where can we raise more money? Can you make more money in the live auction? Can you raise more money in your sponsorship? And so setting expectations, onboarding. Then I offer a kickoff party where we bring all the parents, if it's a school, committee, whatever, if it's a organization that's the chairs, like let's get everyone together and then walk them through the procurement brainstorming session and process. From there, we go into if they want to have consult on marketing and sponsorship. How can they market their event best? How do they bring sponsors in more deeply? I mean, listen, if you're a school and you've got real estate agents as a sponsor, who are the best salespeople in the room? The real estate agents, not the parents. So why don't you have the real estate agency sponsor and underwrite the trip to Mexico for your heads or tails or your rock, paper, scissors, or whatever your revenue stream is, and have them be the ones to sell it? Because what do they want? The real estate agent wants to meet the parent. Oh, John, you live over on Huckleby Lane. I just sold the Smith's house over there. Oh, you know that they want that.
Mhm.
That's how they're going to connect with people, not just a name in the program. So I work with them on the sponsorship idea and like kind of like, what are they doing? Maybe underwrite things as opposed to your gold, silver, bronze packages, and have people underwrite things. How do you utilize a sponsor to give a little bit more for our fund and need to be our match or our lead donor, etc. Then we talk about fund and needs, a whole consult there, checking in, a full analysis of strategies, past analytics, this sort of stuff. We talk about a meeting about revenue enhancers. What do we doing game wise? Paddle drops, golden tickets. I love the Taylor Swift tour last year. We raised, $20,000 at like each event just on a pair of tickets. It was incredible. But those were huge, but we talk about revenue enhancers. Doesn't make sense. Not all revenue enhancers are just about the money. Some of them are just to transition the energy of the room. How do we get people from the cocktail hour in? Some events, they don't need a revenue enhancer. They don't want to do a game like heads or tails. There's no time in the program. So that's a conversation. I love working on our run of shows. How are we going to, when we look at the whole night, it's like, we only have 45 minutes or an hour for fundraising. How do we get them? Where's the best impact on that? What's the best flow? Do we want to do the fund and need first before the live auction, or invert that? Not that there's a perfect science to that, but it definitely makes sense to have that discussion with the client, what's worked in the past and this sort of stuff. Then we'd always check in, but a full conversation about the live auction, the order, the details and all that, but also like what's happening with the live auction. Are we doing, how many items, experiences, what do they have access to? What makes most sense? Let's pull from the online auction and maybe repurpose some things. And so we'll also do a venue walkthrough where we meet with the caterer, the production, obviously the production. I mean, oh, we have a PA. It's like, no, that's not a PA. The speakers on the ceiling.
That little 3-inch speaker does not project sound.
It does not, no matter what they think. So venue walkthrough is huge. And then at the end of an event debrief after. So like, that's kind of my structure. Mm-hmm. All of the meetings are check-ins and we kind of set a goal. Hey, our next meeting, we're going to dive into our fund and need, but we're also going to do an auction check-in to see where things are at. And then we also say is what's pressing, what's new, what do you, and they might say, well, before we get into the fund and need, we really want to, like just my call right before this was, we're doing a 007 theme. What's a good revenue generator? I'm like, well, let's think about it. We could do a card thing. We could do this. And then I put it out there to our forum of other auctioneers, and I'm generating new ideas for like the briefcase or, how can we spin the roulette wheel where people can, all buy the spots, and it's like 38 spots, $100 spot. That's $3,800. Can we sell it? What's the, who can a sponsor underwrite that? You get the point. So every call has many facets to it, but we're going to focus on certain things.
Absolutely. Speaking of revenue enhancers, I always ask my guests this question, and it is, what is your favorite revenue enhancer, probably of all time? I know it's different for different situations, but overall, what is your favorite and how do you execute it, or what's the basics of it?
So I'm a big fan of rock, paper, scissors. It's fun. I always try to get like someone from the board to wear, organization to wear a referee shirt.
Okay.
So I love that. I try to get the organization to buy one of the belts. And so like the winner might win a trip to Cabo, but they also get a championship belt. And so like the photos of these events are so great, where you get, everyone's doing rock, paper, scissors, you get down to the finals. I always have the DJ play, the Rocky theme song. And it's just always hyped up and fun, and people are giggling and especially after we do it one time, they know for next year and it raises a good amount of money. Sometimes they'll do it Rochambeau. So we get 100 people, and then, immediately you're down to, once you lose, you only get one chance, right?
Uh-huh.
So once you lose, you follow the person you lost. So immediately, you're split, and then you're split, and then you're split, and then you're split, and you're down. You get to the finals, and is now rooting for. You got 48 people on each side rooting for their people.
For the champion.
So it's totally fun. But I love doing that revenue. And then the other one that I offer all my clients, if you see my photos, I always have a fancy jacket. So I like the sequence jackets. That's kind of my vibe. I have like a closet full. My son loves it. And I've got a closet full of different colors and different styles. I try to change them up every year a little bit, but I sell the jacket off my back, and that becomes a thing. So 100% of the proceeds go to the organization. It can go for like $250 for like some small schools. It's gone for 10,000 for some other organizations. Catholic Charities of Atlanta has become such a thing. They expect it. People hold what they were going to give. Like they're ready to give that at the end of the night for the jacket. So there's a little bit of competitive nature there. And some of the bishops and whatnot have been seen wearing my jackets at like conferences for, the clergy. So it's kind of like it's become a thing. It's kind of cool.
Wanted to ask you a couple of things. You help your clients with auction procurement. I know in the fundraising sector, that always seems to be, oh my goodness, what do we do? Do we have anybody that owns a Vail resort? Do we have anybody that has a timeshare? Do we have anybody that is a renowned chef? Things of that nature. How do you approach the auction procurement for your clients?
Well, the answer is I don't, except for the when I actually do the auction. So, for example, music festivals, I still run some auctions at specific music festivals. One coming up is Mempho Fest, takes place in Memphis, raising money for St. Jude. So I procure all the items for that, the experiences, etc. I work with the sponsors. I mean, I come in. I mean, I'm coming in and running the auction. So there's no committee, for sure, like the festival gives me tickets and things like that, VIP upgrades. We work with all the artists and I get them to sign guitars and this sort of stuff. But so that's where I come in and do full on procurement. And I do that only occasionally. It was something I was doing a little bit more, but it's a lot of
work,
juice and a lot of squeezing. So yeah. But I like to do a couple of those a year because it keeps me in the music industry and I absolutely love it. And I've worked with these bands for many years, so it keeps my relationship solid with them. And so there are things like that I've done there are times that I do that, but 90% of my clients I'm not doing that for. I do help them with consignment though. Like that's where if they're looking for a specific trip, then I will help them determine the best partners, the best pricing, the best places, and etc. And I actually, I really like working with consignment when it makes sense, and it doesn't always make sense. But I also am trying to really understand the product. Matter of fact, I'm headed out next week to Costa Rica for this weekend. I'll be there for 10 days, and I'm going to go check out some properties that I've been selling, so I can,
nice.
Speak from experience.
Absolutely, you go see it, and you can write off the trip. That's nice. You mentioned something about silent auction software. If you go online on Google and you do a search for silent auction software or online auctions, there's about 100 pages. And you also mentioned earlier in when we were talking, instead of saying you consult with them about their silent auction, you said you consult with them about their online auction. And I understand that there is a kind of a paradigm shift where nonprofits are embracing the online auction process because they can lengthen the length of time, they can automate it, and they don't have to worry about the silent auction during the night because it's all handled electronically. But as far as silent auction software, is there one or a few that you're giving them a choice of or recommending as the good guys? How do you approach that?
Yeah, sure. So first thing I would recommend anyone to go to my website, auctioneer.com, and there's a tab called resources. And on those resources, I've got a list of mobile bidding platforms. These are the ones that I've got relationships with, and I've done some work in talking to or clients have used. Every site has something different than another. Every site has something different than another, right?
Sure.
Some are going to give you reporting that you want this way, and others are going to give you, there's no perfect software. So the first thing is, price, right? Like you go with One Cause or GiveSmart. These are really expensive softwares, but you're getting robust reporting. You're paying for all their marketing and all their service, their support and this sort of stuff, because they're big companies versus, up and comers like event.gives doesn't have the reporting functionality, say One Cause has, but has a great real, zero latency on the live stream. If you do that part of it, competitive pricing. I mean, you can pass the price onto your supporters. They take a percentage. So there's a lot of different sites out there from, Qtego is a little bit more expensive. You got Handbid and you got, there's a ton. When I work with a client before, like if it's a new client and they call me for their event 6 months out, they typically, this is not their first year. They already are using a software they're comfortable with. So they don't need my consult so much there. The newer clients, like a first time event, that's where they need my consult, but I'm not working with that many of them because they're a lot more work.
Absolutely.
And
And let's
I'm
face
a
it,
higher cost.
as you start out versus when you get so established, you only have so many weekends, Fridays, Thursdays available. And as you fill them up, they already know what to expect from you. So your consulting is different.
It is.
And then
But that beginner though,
higher evolution of consultation, so to speak.
absolutely. But the beginner, when they're like my friend calls me up, her daughter's got a school auction. Like, what do we use? I'm like, oh, well, do they have a budget? Or like, what are you trying to raise? We're trying to raise like 30 to 50,000 bucks. I'm like, use event.gives. It's super easy. You can figure it out and you can be up and running in minutes. And you could, if you have a Facebook page, you could run your event. Like, it's not complicated. Some of the other ones, I mean, Greater Giving is great. They've got phenomenal, robust reporting. There's a lot of bells and whistles, but it's a little more cumbersome. Like for the mother who is only putting a couple hours a week to this event, they want something they don't have to really think too much about. But for the development director who wants all those analytics to be able to go, who bid the most? What, out of our auction, like what did the 80% of our funds come from? What did 20% of our funds come from? How much, what had the most bids? What had the least bids? What categories sold well? You need the bigger softwares to have the reporting feature, and that costs a little bit more.
Sure. You also say that you coach speakers, and as I also noticed, you are an MC yourself. When coaching speakers for a nonprofit gala, what just hit some highlights, what's important to do and important not to do's?
Yeah, most of the time the clients aren't taking advantage of that opportunity. But the coaching really comes down to, hey, listen, I'm going to make my time to talk to that speaker. Typically it's the one that's going to set up that fund and need, that, the paddle raise. I want to make sure it's a strong emotional appeal, but also that they don't spend 10 minutes talking about it. So what I want them to do is practice with me, and I'm going to time them. And I'm going to look at their notes. I'm going to help slice and dice it so we really just get to the meat and potatoes of it. You don't need to share about the mission if
Sure.
we already had someone share about the mission. Share about your, you got to hit the appeal. So it's really working with them, because they, often they'll sit there and a speaker will write out their speaking points, and then it's like they come into it and they're ready to give you the annual report. It's like, no, I need you to pull the emotion. Like your kid, you got a scholarship for the school, and your kid has been able, like you're grateful for that. So that's what we got to share. How better yet, like this one of the one I love, when it's like dyslexic, programs and stuff like that, or I'm working with a camp coming up, and it's a diabetic camp. Like, why would kids that like need like a special camp for diabetes? Well, it's because they're totally treated differently at other camps. The other camps aren't equipped to be able to check their levels and make sure like that they're safe. Oh, you're going to be swimming after lunch. Therefore, you're going to, this, and you need this much of insulin, and it's a science. Okay. But what about the parents that get a week break? The parents are the ones that are constantly checking their blood every day and their levels, and are like, their kids are their patients. They get a week off when their kid goes to that camp. So that's what we need to talk about, not just the kids' experience at camp. We all could see the photos. We all know that. But what does it mean for the parents to have that? What does it mean for their relationship as a couple to be able to have that burden taken off of them for just a week, where they don't have to have their kid as a patient? What does that mean?
So not so much the feature, but the benefit, teaching them basic salesmanship, so to speak, the emotional, rather than say that something has air conditioning, tell them how that air conditioning made me feel on a 102-degree sweltering day with 98% humidity,
and all in 3 minutes or less.
Absolutely, please, in 3 minutes or less. Absolutely. I know you've probably never heard this before, but your website says that you are a sit-down comedian.
Yeah, it's a joke.
Do you have a favorite joke?
I don't have a favorite joke. I mean, listen, I have a son. The reason why I have a son is so I can officially do dad jokes.
I see.
Yeah, I'm kind of a punny type person typically. But yeah, so my joke is I do what does it say? I do an hour, half hour sit down comedy.
There you go. We talked a few minutes ago about the 3-inch speaker out of the hotel ballroom, and how inefficient that is. Do you have any recommendation, easy for me to say, recommendations about sound systems, whether it's a specific, like it's the SM5 or the Bose, or do you have any specific recommendations, or do you leave that mostly up to the nonprofit or the vendor or the event coordinator, or do you handle that yourself?
So let's start with my contract. I have a very clear, precise, like, this is the level of sound and audio we require for it to be done properly. Then most of my clients that are on the larger scale, more established, I should say, not larger scale, but they're using the companies like, and again, on my resources page, I've got the Atlanta ones that I've worked with, like Sci-Fi or AV Tech or Music Matters or Active Production and Design. Active Production is probably like the most popular one. So if I see they got Active, I know like the 6 reps I could call, which one's going to be assigned to me. It's probably the same one from last year. Like, we know we're in good hands immediately. With schools, it's a little more challenging because they're like, again, a parent that's like, yeah, the venue's got sound. It's like, do they? So that's where I want to, like, here's my specs in the contract. They'll go and they'll come back and be like, they don't have that. It's like, okay, we have to have a conversation. And it's so important because I can tell you we all have our war stories, but I mean, oh, we've got a great Bose system. And I'm like, okay. And I get there and it's one speaker. Like, I don't need to tell you that doesn't work for 200 people. So like, I don't get in that situation anymore. I won't work with a client unless that's why it's in the contract. Okay. But like, let's say, like, oh no, we've got a sound company and they're like, yeah, we got a band and we got the speakers at the front. I'm like, that's great for a band, but the band's not raising money. I'm raising money and everyone in the room needs to hear me equally. So I need 2 more speakers in the back and I need you to have a delay on that. And if they can't do that, then we need to compromise and find a way that we can get more speakers so it sounds level. And so sound is huge because if our clients expect us to be able to raise them money, then we need to be heard and heard properly. And again, it's not just, well, we have speakers. Yes, you do. The band's great to blow that out. Yeah, it has to be level. I've had events where the donors in the front can hear me, but their ears are hurting and the people in the back can't. So how do we level that so it's even?
No, I agree. That is so important. Uh, um, Seth, I want to tell you, I've really appreciated talking with you this afternoon. You bring a fresh perspective that I haven't seen before, and I wanted to close with a question, or I guess a conversation. You have a couple of podcasts. Funny thing is, your WTNS. I say it that way because the radio station here in Coshocton, Ohio. Now, we're a town of 12,000. My radio station has the call letters WTNS. I've been
Oh,
on
that's awesome.
WTNS for 30 years, but it's not. What is the WTNS? It's Seth
With
and
Turner and Seth, Inside Out with Turner and Seth, WTNS.
there you
With
go.
Turner and Seth. So that's when we were creating it, we wanted to do like a call like WTNS,
There
that
you
was
go.
the idea.
I guess my final question, you've got the coffee connections, and it's very similar to what I am trying to accomplish. Now, like I said, you're ninth in my podcast, and I see that you've got several dozens, or if not 100 podcast episodes. But so far, what I have been interviewing or having conversations with are auctioneers. I want to expand that. As a matter of fact, I got on AFP this morning. They've got a forum, and I put a thing out there that I want to have nonprofit guests. How did you get to the point where you have people from the other side of the industry? Look, I can only have so many conversations with auctioneers, even as innovative as you are, and the different perspectives that everybody's got. How do we, I guess what I'm trying to do is bring the nonprofit organizations and I want them to marry the auctioneers, so to speak, put that marriage together.
Yeah.
How do you have that conversation with the nonprofits, and how do you find them? Or is it through the event coordinators? Is it through the nonprofits themselves? I'm on a journey, and I have no idea how I'm going to get there, but I'm going to get there. And it doesn't matter, other than that I do keep kicking at it and going with it. But since you're doing it, I thought I'd ask you.
Yeah, you should rip right off my playbook. So you started by saying you want to do more auctions, right? So 2020 hit. It was my first season where I gave up the music industry and I was just being an auctioneer. I had all these gigs lined up, and it was like, here we go, fresh out of boot camp and ready to go. So I'm sitting here and I was talking to Janelle Gallagher, and she's my coach, and I work with her. Back then I was working a lot with her. And I was like, gosh, what am I going to do? Like, I lost all my gigs, and I'm trying, like, now it's the summer and I'm calling, like, I can do virtual, like, what's going on? So I'm calling, different nonprofits, and I'm trying to, like, get my LinkedIn going and cold call everyone. And hi, I'm Seth Weiner, and you've got, I could be a solution for you. What's your problem? Like a whole deal. No, nothing's happening. I'm like getting nowhere. She's like, Seth, don't you have a podcast in the music industry? I'm like, yeah. She goes, so do a podcast. I'm like, yeah, but I don't know, like, about what? So we structure this idea for insights from innovators. There's all these nonprofit innovators in Atlanta. So and I want to meet them, and I want them to know me. So started with one that I knew, called him up and said, hey, I want you, or her up, I want you to be on my podcast, my kid's school. Just, right. It's super easy. She gets it. She wants to do it. We start there. So I had about 3 or 4 nonprofits that I knew, that I worked with, or friends of mine. So I kind of started just with that. And then I had a formula. I wrote out exactly, like, this is a 30-minute live podcast. I'm going to ask you, we're going to start about talking about coffee. We're going to share a mug. We're going to do this thing. And then we're going to get into it. You're going to give me your pitch, like your organization. What do you do? Then I'm going to ask you some questions about that. Then we're going to go into what's something innovative you've done. And then we're going to go ahead and talk about that. And then we'll talk a little bit about fundraising and what you might have coming up, and et cetera. And then we'll close. Before we close, is there anything we, missed, you wanted to, talk about that you didn't talk about? And then when we close, here's the kicker. you get to choose my next guest. So would you be so inclined to tell me, recommend someone that's a another nonprofit innovator in Atlanta? Now, all these nonprofits, you're in a nonprofit, you know other nonprofits.
Absolutely.
And so that's how the web started. And every Tuesday and Thursday during COVID, I was here and I was able to connect with all these nonprofits. Did many of them hire me as an auctioneer? No, I did not. A lot of them work with different clients. I mean, colleagues of mine, excuse me. So I'm not trying to steal their business, but
Sure.
branding wise, that's over 100 organizations and know you're auctioneer. When someone calls them and says, "Hey, I'm looking for an auctioneer," they might say, "Well, we work with so-and-so, but there's also this guy had a great conversation with." It put my brand out there in a way that's priceless. Now I still do it. I don't do it as often. I do want to pick it up and maybe try to change things around a little bit. Or if I want to, break into say a different market, like let's say I'm wanting to move when I'm getting a little, once my kids in college and I want to move to say Colorado. Well, it's going to take a little time to build the business there. So that's another way to get the brand going. Or maybe I want to work with specific organizations. Or different, like I want to focus on pets. I just want to save pets. Well, then I would go and start talking to all the pet organizations. The organizations get a kick out of it because they get marketing and that's something that's valuable to them. So it's a win-win for everyone.
That's fantastic. And I thank you for the inspiration, giving me plenty of ideas. Now, if somebody in the Atlanta area, or I'm going to assume that you will travel as well, nationwide, even internationally. If somebody wants to hire auctioneer.com, wants to hire Seth Weiner, how do they get a hold of you? And I kind of spoiled that by already saying what your website was, but how do I always want to do that with my guests is how do they get a hold of you if they want to hire you?
Yeah. I mean, there's so many different ways, but the easiest is your auctioneer, yourrocktioneer.com. Your auctioneer on Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook, all the social media. My Instagram right now is a little slow for the summer, but I try to post about 2-3 times a week. I like to share different ideas of what strategies are working, what's, just good information there. So definitely check out some of my Instagram posts. It's all there. One thing about auctioneers we like to share.
Absolutely. And I want to thank you so much for coming on and doing this podcast episode with me. And ladies and gentlemen, I am Shawn Dostie. I am the charity ambassador, thecharityambassador.com. Also the podcast owner here of America's Fundraiser, available on YouTube and Spotify, and I'm sure some other areas. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, I thank you and wish you a great day. And I think I can safely say from Seth and I, we hope that your next gala attains your goals, meets your goals, and beats your goals. Have a great day, folks.